Do you know who or what could be dwelling in the trees and bushes at the edge of your garden? Perhaps they are there all the time, perhaps just passing through, but sometimes they purposefully make their presence known to us. We moved to a house in the deep south. The yard at this place was huge, and the area was secluded, with the edges of our yard running off into the woods. The yard itself was full of trees, and nobody had bothered to clean up the sticks and the leaves from the previous fall, so when I moved in, I made it my mission to clean up the yard. One day I raked the whole thing up into several huge piles set next to the edge of the woods, and they were too big to burn all at once, so I thought I'd just tackle them one at a time. Well, by the time I'd finished, it was starting to get dark, and my husband had come home, so he joined me outside for a fun evening of, burning things. Well, I just lit the edge of the first pile, and we were standing there talking in the twilight while we watched the fire burn. The woods around us were totally quiet, except for the sound of what we thought was a squirrel just over to our right, scurrying around loudly in some residual leaves between some bushes. We ignored it at first, but it kept getting more and more rambunctious until we finally started talking about it. We wondered if I had stirred up some old acorns, and we thought it was a bit strange that the squirrels in this new area to us were so comfortable getting up close to people. It was only about 15 feet away from us. There was still just a tiny bit of dark blue in the sky, but we were down under the trees, and it was really too dark for us to see what it was, especially since our eyes had become adjusted to the bright fire too. The rustling noises continued, but eventually we just went back to talking about something else and not really paying attention to it, when all of a sudden this creature rushed out from the space between the bushes and ran past us as it leapt into the woods. I just managed to turn my head as it briefly entered the circle of the fire's light to see that it was something running upright on two legs. It was moving so fast that I didn't get a good look at it, but I could see that it was solid white and it was about 1.5 feet tall. I have no idea if it had bare skin or if it was covered in fur, but I've never seen anything like it before. If you've ever lived on acreage or backed up against a reserve or woodlands or a forest, you've probably become accustomed to the normal activity of creatures living there. You may also have witnessed inexplicable sounds or movements from your own backyard. There is one common thing which is often reported before a strange encounter, and that is an eerie silence which falls over the area. Ivan Sanderson was a well-known naturalist, biologist and author from Scotland. In 1928, Sanderson was visiting a rubber plantation in Sumatra, and he experienced a bizarre incident which he could never fully explain. And this is what happened. One night after dinner, Sanderson, his hosts and some other guests gathered on the wide veranda to relax in the cool night air. The only light shining was from small lamps and some dappled moonlight. The evening was quiet and uneventful when suddenly, with no warning of any kind, small stones began to shower down onto the veranda from the darkness beyond. And this is how Sanderson himself described the bizarre scene. The host told us that these small stones came all the time, particularly on certain nights, usually very still nights, but not necessarily dark nights. Everyone present was amazed and sceptical in equal parts. Sensing our disbelief, our host told us to mark the stones in any way we liked and throw them back anywhere into the hopelessly thick tangle of vegetation which surrounded the garden and house. So we did. To help us mark the stones, he found us some chalk from his desk, a file and some pencils, and the ladies even used their lipsticks, and we employed all kinds of designs to mark these stones. Then every one of us threw the stones back into the dark vegetation surrounding us. We threw them direct and hard, or high and softly, and in every conceivable direction. Almost, but not quite all, of the marked stones were thrown back onto the veranda within a matter of seconds. The others some minutes later. I would say that some 50 stones at least were so marked and thrown that night. I can vouch for the fact that it would be absolutely impossible for any human to trace, find, and throw back those marked stones from that vegetational tangle, short of clearing the tangle and sifting through its entire surface. This is so strange. What was lurking in that dark vegetation? Or whatever it was, surely it was many. It couldn't have been just one. And they could see the people on the veranda clearly. They could move around the vegetation quickly and freely, making no noise and with little more than dappled moonlight. It's hard to imagine any child, bird, or even mammal being able to do this. The host mentioned that this bizarre act wasn't uncommon and didn't appear afraid or even disturbed by it. I think this is a great example of a family living bumper to bumper with nature and in harmony with all the living things, seen and unseen, which are dwelling within it. If you enjoy these strange but true videos, I think you'll like the one on screen now too. Just click on it to watch. And remember, it's a strange world. Keep your eyes and ears open and be kind. Cheerio!